Good evening, I'm Zaraganat. Welcome to the studio this evening. So tonight, some pyrography. Well, some more pyrography. So we're going to be doing some work on this. So we'll just get on with it basically. Sorry, I was kind of distracted a little bit there. So, working on some of the planking. Which we will carry on with around here. So this is really just some shadow work, but this planking is also has a lot of black on it, which comes from previous wood preservative coatings, and it's shaded in some ways because it's got what looks like a shadow, because of what I would describe as rain shadow. It's lightest where it's washed off. It's washed off because of rain, and just underneath these planks it's been protected from the rain running down the front, so it hasn't gone as light as some of the other areas of the planking. So almost certainly I will just be donning around all over the place, just filling in things where I feel like it. So it's more, this is kind of just blocking things in really. Not exactly true, because I am working on some details as I go along, and but it kind of just helps me if I do that, so I'm going to continue doing that. How you do things when you're doing this sort of stuff is entirely, of course, up to yourself. Yeah, then that's sort of, so let's just put that in there like that so I can see it. I've got a bit of stuff coming over the roof there. Yeah. So there's always a decision to be made when you're doing these sorts of things as to quite what you actually do or don't put in. So I've got some roof felt which is hanging over here, and I was just trying to decide, whether to actually bother putting it in, and I may or may not do so. It may eventually sort of not make it into the final image. It's not fantastically important that it's actually the right, down to whether or not a piece of felt is there or not there. The detail that's already here is enough for it to be recognised. And so sort of additional bits and pieces like how perfectly you've represented it don't really matter. So the thing I'm going to try and do is try and go use all the pen strokes here across the board. So at the angle that the board is at, as though I was going across it with a straight line. Then if I get any sort of, and I will get sort of pen marks, if I'm not at all perfectly 100% smooth in my colouring, and if I do get those pen marks, or indeed I get marks showing up from the grain of the wood, then because they're in line with the grain or in line with the plank, the marks will be in the direction you expect, and therefore they'll look like wood grain, or the, you know, the wood grain. The marks, the rings, etc. that you see on sawn timber. Now this wants to be a lot darker, so we're going to make it a lot darker. And we're going to do without that so taking my time with this, it does help if you take your time to build up the colour, that you get a smoother colour overall. Now I will want this to be darker, but for the moment what I'm getting here is fine. And that should not have turned the volume. Stop doing that. If I wanted the volume on Twitch, I'd turn it on. Stop resetting it. So I do have in a window on the PC that I'm using here for the chat, I do have my on stream as a monitor, so I can have a look and see anything that's going on with it if it goes offline or something like that. But I do have the volume muted most of the time. Partly is, well, mostly that's to stop the fact that the volume might, the sound maybe picked up by the microphone would then echo through the microphone. Won't howl, but it might echo around, so you'd hear something, whatever it is, a 30-second echo. And every time I turn it off and every time I refresh the screen, it turns it back on again. Now you can use a pyrographic pen like this, totally like it was a pencil. You know, you can do fine lines, you can build up colour by going over it multiple times, you can use similar techniques of using a point or a flat of a pencil, etc. So it is quite a versatile tool. Now then, what I want to do here on this is a piece of detail. Which this isn't fantastically, it's not bad for, but it's not fantastically the best tool for this. I want to do a fine, actually it's not so bad, because if I do cook the wood underneath, which is what's happening here, it's not really important because that wood is actually going to get coloured anyway. That's the danger when you're doing fine areas, like small areas like this, and you're trying to apply quite a bit of heat. Then you do tend to cook the area here, because I don't really want to turn this nib over, because I really do want to use sort of the flat of the base. I'll get a smoother looking output by doing that. If I turn it over, it's like trying to fill in a large area using a sharp knife blade, and it's really difficult to get a good colouring that way. So although it looks like I'm using the tip here of the tool, and kind of indeed I am, but I'm actually tipping it slightly. It's a rounded edge, like if a nail or something, but instead of just doing the edge or just using the edge of it, I'm tipping it slightly, so I'm getting a slightly wider contact. Now I do want this to be quite dark, because that's going to be quite dark as well. But I want this to be very just subtly darker. It's Friday today. I've just realised it's Friday today. Doesn't that sound weird? I hadn't really realised what day it was. I've got a whole weekend. That is cold, fizzy water with ice cubes. Really rather nice. Now then. Really should use an easel, but it's a bit bulky, is an easel. Now I could actually do with here is some more heat, because that's turned right down, I didn't realise. Okay, now I've sort of defined this board, I can then colour that edge in. Yes, this is the underneath. So I can't see, right, okay. Again, it's when you're referencing a photograph, which is what I'm doing. Sometimes you are left sort of thinking, what's that line supposed to be? In this particular case, it really isn't supposed to be anything. So I'm going to make sure the line that appears there disappears. It would in theory be the edge of the roof against the board, but it's too dark to see. Okay, now then we'll now make this board here itself darker. I have no time constraints on this particular image, so I can take my time and work on it however I feel like, and I can carry on working on it until I'm 110% happy on it. On boss commission work, I obviously do work until I'm happy with it, but when you're working under time constraint, as you kind of have to do when you're working with commissions, then I work faster. Doesn't mean I work less or even that I don't do as good a job. It just means I work faster because what I'm doing is here I'll take twice as long to build up a colour because I don't need to do it fast. It's kind of like I'm enjoying what I'm doing, so why work too fast? And when I can, because I don't have the constraint, I can work slowly and I can enjoy what I'm doing more. That's kind of the thing. Now then. I think we'll leave that detail off there as well. There's a porcelain insulator on the side here of the hut where power used to go to it, and the insulator's there, the wire's gone, it's long gone, but I was just trying to decide whether to put it in or not. Don't think so. I think we'll leave that out. Now then, yeah. So often you've got a lot of, I mean, shadows. This is a dull day when the photograph was taken. It's great for taking photographs because you get an overcast day, you get a lot of, you don't get very focused light, but you do get a lot of soft light, you get an even distribution. It's great for taking photographs, but it does mean that things like shadows are really, really subtle. And shadows are often what help you to see things. So you can see things sticking out, if you like, because of the shadows that exist underneath them. When those shadows aren't there, or they're really subtle shadows, then it becomes a lot harder to tell what sticks out and what doesn't. Like this particular thing here. Whether that sticks out or not is going to be determined by how good I get the shading underneath. Okay, one of the things I want to do there is get rid of that line that's been drawn there, and I want to cook that in. One thing you kind of have to do with pyrography in a way is be quite confident in what you're doing. It's really hard to do little tiny scratches like you might with a pencil, being tentative about it. You either don't get any colouring at all if you do that, or it doesn't look fantastically good. What you do get, you do sort of have to be quite bold. That doesn't mean you have to make it dark or black. I mean, this is being quite bold, but it's being quite light. It's being confident about what you're doing. You are making a mark. You know what sort of mark you're after, and you just go for it. And here initially I'm just laying a light colour down. Gets rid of the white. Because uncoloured wood always looks white, no matter what the colour of the wood is. As you start laying down pyrography around a white, an uncoloured area, it starts to look whiter and whiter, even though it isn't white. One of those tricks of colour that your eyes and brain play. Now I want to establish just a layer of colour there, on which I'll now build the actual colouring of that of the thing itself. That's a shadow, but I'm not going to do that. Okay. Again, working along the line of the board here. So I'm working at an angle because that's the angle that the board is at on the image here. Real life, of course, it's perfectly horizontal. Yeah, so we're kind of in the real dark area here, the shadow area. So only as you get down towards the bottom here, you start to be able to see the edge of the roof. So we will effectively fade that out. So I've just come up a little bit towards the toe of the tool, so tipping it slightly here. Just to give me a smaller heat area and therefore effectively a hotter one. And what that's letting me do here is blend these two areas together and actually smooth out that line I've got in there. As you are sort of heating the wood, it does tend to shrink away slightly. You do get, demarcation lines like that, and they can sometimes be really difficult to get rid of. Now I don't mind at this bottom end being able to see it, because you do start to be able to see it. So that's it's becoming acceptable there. And what I want to do now is darken this edge down here. Now I'm doing something really subtle here, which is just do that. Just make it marginally wider, this roof, set at the underneath of the roof here. Just marginally wider because of the slope of the board. So I want it to look wider there than just above it. Makes you think the board is sort of going underneath this one, which of course is what it is. It's always good if you can fool somebody into thinking it's exactly what you wanted them to think it is. then you've done your job. Sometimes if you're not quite able to get the right sort of angle for whatever reason, turn the wood around. Then it helps. I mean, the wood grain here isn't helping me on this because the wood grain is going that way and I'm wanting to go that way. And it is actually starting to show up a little bit. Now, provided it doesn't stand out too much, it will still give a wood look. Now I want this a bit darker, so that's darkening it down. In actual fact, this area above here wants to be closer to that. This isn't a shadow as such, this is an angle cut on the board, or rather not cut on the board, because this is waney edge timber, which means this is the actual tree edge. It is if it's proper waney, he says, because I'm in the UK, and a little while ago I bought some waney edge, a small piece of waney edge oak board from a DIY company, one of the national DIY companies, and I only just realised it's described as waney edge, but I think their version of waney edge is somebody with a bandsaw that wandered a little bit, as opposed to waney edge, which is supposed to be the edge of the tree. But of course generally speaking, I guess the designers or the people who buy that sort of thing for shelving don't really want the edge of the tree, they just want a wavy edge. Okay, that wants to be all dark, but that bit wants to be darker than dark, and it just took me a little while to at least get something that looks reasonable. Again, I'm just taking my time with letting the colour build up more slowly rather than trying to go for a final colour straight away. It sometimes gives you more of a depth of colour, but it is you know, a time consuming technique to build up colour slowly. You certainly get a lot more subtle colour changes. There's very slight, subtle colour changes there because there's a very slight difference in the colour. But these are kind of all techniques which achieve different things. By doing it like this with small strokes or small width strokes, I'm also enhancing its wood grain effect. Now when I work on commissioned pieces, I'd look at something and say, do I really need to do that for what's there? And I mean, if I'm doing a commission piece and they specifically want me to do these sorts of things, then yeah, I'll do them. It just costs more money to do because it takes considerably longer to do them. So some of the earlier portraits for cats that you may have seen me do for Junior or Felix, for example, there I won't say I did every cat hair, but there is a high resemblance to the fact that there's fur. You can see the fur because of individual fur strokes that were done. That is a technique. It took 10 hours to do a portrait which was about that sort of size because of that, but it's a fantastic looking portrait because it looks like actual fur on the cat as opposed to just sort of a brown area, which would be an alternative technique. So it really depends on what somebody's after. Now it's really kind of rather amazing that these boards here are actually something like 50 or more years old, and it's going on for 10 or 20 years since they last had any wood preservative on them. So it's they've done really rather amazing. Once they sort of dry out, some of these boards, and this is, I think these are oak, effectively are last for absolutely ages. But they've lasted longer than the rest of the shed, which is probably done in a softwood of some kind. I really ought to have something in front of me, just like a small LED that comes on when there's a message in chat, because when I'm concentrating on something like this, whilst I can see chat out the corner of my eyes, only if it's moving quite a bit do I see it actually move. So I have to keep looking at it. So if you do put a message into chat and I don't immediately respond to it, just give me a little while. I could actually move it to right in front of me, which would be a bit better. But then I've got to move everything else around. Oh dear. So that's one of the difficulties when you're like me. You are a variety broadcaster to some extent. I broadcast a variety of things, well at least at the moment I do. So you've seen all sorts of things on this channel. Jewellery making with sort of chainmail or beadwork, bead weaving, that sort of thing. Scraper board, wood carving, this pyrography, punchcraft. That's just the 5 that I started with. I've since done things like glass engraving, power carving, diamond, what's described as diamond painting, making remote control models. So I think I made a helicopter on stream, in the process of making a 1/14 scale truck on, or is it 1/12? Something like that, truck on stream. And the setup for all of those is different. So forever changing setups around, and some are more convenient than others. What's going to be interesting shortly is setting up for glasswork, and that because it's going to be in a completely different place. It's not in this studio but a different studio. Then I'm going to have to set up in that place and work out the best way of doing that, as well as then potentially sort of shifting the broadcasting around if I come back into this studio to broadcast stuff out of here. That's going to be one heck of a big resetting exercise. But I am hoping now it will be a matter of weeks, a few weeks before I start doing the glass work. As I've now tried it out and I like it, I'm just waiting for the new studio to be ready for the glass work, and then I'll start to do that. Hopefully I will be able to broadcast it. It is a hope. It depends if I've got sufficient power and also sufficient internet access, because there isn't I don't have an internet cable or even an Ethernet cable into the studio, into that studio. That was something which kind of didn't really occur to me at the time when it was being planned, and so I'm going to have to see if I can do something to get a reasonably high-speed internet connection out into the studio. So I don't know if that be Wi-Fi, laser, or power line, or something else. Okay, so that probably will want to go dark. Yeah, it does want to go darker. So let's layer a bit more colour and texture over the top of it again. So this is where layering does come in useful, because I'm effectively drawing small lines in the board direction, and each of those small lines is adding to the darkness of the colour. So I'm darkening it down, but I'm not doing it as a smooth colour. I'm doing it as lots of small lines which sort of go together, overlap, and it's adding to the texture of the area. So again, it gives that sort of wood grain sort of effect that the shed actually does have. It adds texture to it, adds depth to the whole image, to the image as a whole, when you do things like this. So it's not just like a solid block of single colour. And then that's got a white. There we go. One thing that sometimes happens when you're doing pyrography, and especially if you're stopping at a line, is when you try and do something on the other side of the line, like the dark edge there of the underboard, then you get a white area because the two don't quite match up with each other. And so you sometimes have to sort of fill that in. It's not quite dark enough. Doesn't fade out until we're about down here, so hello. That still wants to be darker, but it'll work for the moment. By doing multiple light passes I can adjust that, really subtle changes. If I need it just a little tiny bit darker I can do that. Well, it is one of the advantages to being very light on the colour and doing multiple passes to bring it down. You've got a real large amount of control over it, which you just wouldn't get if you tried to go to final colour all in one go. Of course, if you're doing it on a speed basis, then that's precisely what you're trying to do, go all in one colour. But I've got like a subtle colour variation there, which is kind of what I'm after. I'm also going to put some of these darker bits in as well. Random start and stop positions when you're doing something like that. Otherwise what you end up with is you do end up with blobs at the end because you've been starting and stopping in the same place. So if you are doing that sort of scrubbing thing, make sure you start and stop in different positions every time. As we get over here, this side here, I'm going to darken this down a bit. It sort of fades more into it, but the roof here has also protected, as well as being a slight shadow, the roof has protected it from the rain, and so the wood preservative around here isn't as washed off. Now you may not be able to see changes taking place here. I can just see them, and the fact that I can just see them means they're really subtle, but you will actually see the effect, not the actual change. And we'll leave that board for the minute. We will be coming back to it. Definitely be coming back to it. That's nothing like what it finally wants to be, but we can move on further down to another area now. So what I'm going to do is colour this next board in. First of all, we'll put just a subtle colour down, just to lose the white. So working here with the tool as flat as I can, as I realise it can be. Sometimes you don't realise you've got it flat, or you don't realise that you haven't. So I'm making sure I've got it flat, and I can generally tell that just by the way the colour gets laid down, which is all talking like this is a paintbrush, but the colour of course is coming from the wood itself. As we're cooking it. Not too worried about perfect coverage or even perfect colouring. Just because This is just to remove the white target, the white area. Now then, before I go over that edge, let's get rid of the pencil, or rather the marking, because I know it's not a pencil that was used. Now that's the inside window, so I've got to remember that there's a window frame around it. So we'll go about there. By using the whole flat of the tool, if I can, the heat is being distributed across the whole of the tool, and whilst it may seem counterintuitive, it means the whole thing appears cooler even though the whole tool is at the same temperature. But I get a smoother, lighter colour than if I went with just the tip. Metal conducts heat quite well, as you probably realise. So if I tip it up and use just like the toe as I do for some of this work, then what you get is the rest of the tool dumps its heat straight down into that tip, and therefore the tip effectively is able to transfer more heat into a smaller area. More heat in a smaller area means darker colour. The same amount of heat spread out over a larger area means there's less heat goes into the area, and therefore it's a lighter colour. Right, so we've got some specific sort of areas around the bottom of the board here where it's going to be lighter. And as we get down into this board, the lighter areas get really quite large and prominent. One thing with having music on is you find, or I find myself applying pyrography strokes to the music. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you have to watch it if it's if you're doing sort of some fine area or something like that. You don't necessarily want to be reacting to the music, so you've got to sort of apply a conscious effort sometimes not to follow the music, because you'll get an effect that you didn't actually want. Now this at the top at least wants to be similar colour to that, but then with a very marginal shadow underneath it, just to lift this up a little bit in terms of direction, that is, so it looks like it's on top of this particular piece of wood. And what you do have to be careful of using this sort of texturing technique is that you don't start and stop a stroke in exactly the same place in, you know, next to each other. You don't start there and stop there all the way down. If you do that, you'll get a line with your starting blob. And even when you are experienced enough to avoid the blob, or know the techniques to avoid it, you still get an effect of the line, vertical line. Just because of coincidence, really, because everything starts and stops in the same place, you do get to sort of see that the subtle difference in change of colour and things. So again, I'm tipping the tool up slightly and I'm using the toe. That's more in contact. That's what's giving me these lots of fine lines that I'm getting. I'm moving across the wood fairly quickly because that way I don't dump a lot of heat and therefore get really dark lines. After all, that's how they were made. So that was moving, doing the same thing but moving slowly on actually about the same heat setting as well. So doing short and long lines now, not doing them all the same length as well as, well, I'm not particularly varying the start here because there is an edge and I do need to start at that edge. Now what I will do is, because there's a board edge there, I can get away with coming down the other way, so which is what I'm going to do actually. Now that'll do actually, it'll do nicely. I didn't get as clean a line as I was expecting, but what I have got is a slightly sort of dotty sort of line, which actually works quite well in terms of this look. It's got that very slight sort of, well, rustic variation. Now the other edge of the board doesn't have it because you can't see the edge of the board, you can just see the corner, and so that doesn't have that sort of mottled . So I have to really carefully get right up to the edge that I'm after. That comes with practice though. I've practiced quite a long time with an airbrush to be able to start and stop on a particular point. I'm not necessarily fantastically good at it, but it is practice, and I have improved over the years of doing it to what I was when I started. And that practice actually comes in really quite useful for pyrography. There is interestingly quite a few technique similarities between pyrography and airbrushing. I love working with media like pyrography where you can do this sort of thing. I'm building up the colour with the texture. By applying the texture, I'm getting colour. It's working itself into the art. And I'm able to build it up slowly because I'm not good at doing it with texture immediately. So what's it look like? Too many marks down that edge. I need to smooth that side out a little bit. That's looking better. It was too much like you could actually see the lines it was drawn with, as opposed to the effect of what it looks like. Still a bit there. as we're looking at the edge of a board, the board edge isn't frayed, so that's something you can do sometimes, because the brown colour is a little bit like a glaze. You can sometimes scrape it or drag it, and that will that sort of smooths things, transitions out a little bit, as I kind of have done there. And so that is something which is often quite useful. Now I've got a mark in the wood there, but it looks rather like a knot hole, so when I'm careful about how I do it, I can actually enhance that effect a little bit. Bit too big. That's better. Quite often it can be the most subtle of things which give your eyes clues to latch onto. So in the particular case of this, for example, a really subtle shadow. Yeah, the really subtle shadow can be enough just to lift the board a little bit further off the wood. Sometimes visually you're not aware of it, especially if it's kind of like a very sort of overcast dull day, but there's just a real subtle, and again it's one of these things that mainly should be able to see locally here. In fact, you can't see a lot of the colouring I've done there. This board is bleaching it out. Let's see if I can adjust colour a little bit here on this, or contrast. So I'm just going to go off camera whilst I fiddle with the video settings, because the whiteboard there is really kind of overdriving things. So advanced. Bring the exposure down a little bit then. I knew that might happen. Is that this light? No, it's actually the bring the brightness down. To the exposure up just a touch. It really wants to be down there somewhere. Can I do that? No, it's just doing the same thing. Bring the brightness down, take the contrast up a little. That's not having a oh, it is reaching it out. That's better, but it's not right. We'll leave it for a while. The fact that this board is so light, you're getting so much light back into the camera, as it will actually get better as we apply more pyrography. The shadow, by the way, is the camera. I've got some quite, well, I'm going to say quite powerful. They're not that powerful. They're only 50 watt light equivalent bulbs. But I've got about 4 of them shining down here, and unfortunately the camera's in the way. I could do with a ring light on the camera. I keep saying that. So that the ring light's the dominant light, and then maybe that would go away, but not just at the moment. Yeah, so this appears on camera to be a heck of a lot lighter than it actually is. It's not very light at all. This board sticks out over the window, as does the one above. Okay. Fiddle with that afterwards. Again, we'll colour this board in. The board that's underneath has an area which is very light, it's almost white. So I guess at this point what I'm doing here is the equivalent of underpainting if you were doing an oil or an acrylic painting. So establishing an underlying colour and then applying a texture colour over the top. Primarily the reason I'm doing it though is not to apply to underpaint. I'm doing it because the white fools my eye into just what colours I'm using, just how dark it is I am actually going, or light. So I need to get rid of that line before I coat over the top of it. I need to fill that in to knock that white off so that I'm starting to see things as the colour they actually are, rather than in contrast to something that's white next to it, which makes things look darker. When I first started doing pyrography, I'd do things and the whole things would be a lot lighter than they ended up, because you sort of, oh, that's too dark. But then as you start to put something like that next to it, that thing that looked really dark suddenly becomes really light looking, and you go, oh, I've got to go over it again. So I do try these days and just fill in colour, even if it is just a purely sort of whitewash, just a really light wash of colour, just knocks that edge off. So for example this, now I can clearly see the difference between this and the white frame that's next to it. Stands out considerably. This now looks a lot darker next to that than it did when the white was there. And I can see, for example, that this bit here is nowhere near as dark as it wants to be now that I've got something darker next to it. So now I can see the colour a lot better, like that. So now I've got to add texture into this and darken it down. Yeah, this edge is quite dark, so I'll just darken that down a little bit, Just playing with the colours here, just to to apply some sort of variation, if you like, to the plain edge, to the plain colour. Again, it's about capturing the spirit rather than the perfect detail. So I'm not copying the actual wood patterns. Nobody's got, well, I was going to say nobody. I'm sure there'll be people out there that would actually sort of take a photograph next to this and go, but that wood mark there isn't exactly in the same place. Well, yeah, it's not. Most people, however, won't do that. That works quite well. And so we go on to the next one. I'm kind of putting off doing some of the bits like the trees. Maybe I should do those the other way. Oh, maybe not. No. Okay. Sometimes, because when you apply pyrography, you actually effectively cause the wood to shrink away. It cuts into wood. You can feel it. It's got a texture. If I do it like that with the tool this way up, I get a sharp edge there, and this bit slopes away, so it comes like that when I use the tool that way. If I turn it around and sort of use it upside down, turn the board upside down, then I'd have a slope that way, and the light reflects off it differently. So exactly how the light reflects off it again is part of how your eye sees it. And we'll see different things because of the way that light reflects off. So some of these boards, like this one at the top, here it's the board edge that you can see, which is sort of sloped downwards, so that the board, if the board's sort of on the side here, it does that. So it's kind of like a triangular shape. Some of these boards here are undercut. I'm guessing they've partially been put on. The other one's been put on upside down because it's undercut, but most are sort of just straight edge, even though it's a curved edge, but it's a straight edge. And then you come down onto the next board. So if I can get my tool in like that and create that straight edge, then you get a reflection off of here, not off of there, and you see it therefore as a shadow, which is what it is. So it's one of those things. Now then, And that's the main shadow, and then we've got a lighter colour around here. Now I got some marking there that because I used a different part of the tool. I got some marking there that I didn't actually want. So now I'm having to sort of just work over it a little bit to disguise that marking. That'll do. And the rest of this board is really light. Okay, what I've done now is turn the temperature down on the tool. The temperature on the tool doesn't control the darkness, it controls how quickly it gets there. Now just adding in a little bit of texture because the plain colour, whilst it's the right sort of colour for what I'm after, just looked too flat. So I need just some variations. Which is what I've got there. I think what I'm going to do is colour this one in as well, and probably the two on the other side. And yeah, we'll apply some colour to this board as well. In fact, I'm going to go all the way down, I think. Now I can build colour up on top of them afterwards. I'm reserving white, uncoloured wood, for the actual white of the frame, and even then there'll be very few areas of it that are actually uncoloured, because there are subtle shades, you know, between the front and the side of the frame. So certain bits will get a really light colour like this. It is really subtle what I'm doing here. I'm not even sure you will see it as such. But it makes a difference to the colour perception that I have, as I've mentioned, because this isn't as white. I can clearly see a difference between this and this. But that's because I'm here. I'm not sure the camera is picking it up. Oh, blimey. Time can pass really quickly whilst you're doing things like this. It's already 10 to 9. I hadn't realised just how quickly the time had passed. Last time I looked it was about 8:05. So normally we'll stream until about 9 o'clock. What I'm going to do is stream until I finish these two boards, and then that will be it for this evening. Got to remember perspective change. There's a vanishing point over here. You're doing it that way. As you come down here, this gets you change angles. It's really easy to get fixated on using the same angle down at the bottom as you did at the top, and if you do that, it's wrong. Because this is actually a 3-point perspective, because it's a real photograph that it was based on, and so the top point of perspective is probably not all that visible, but the two side perspectives are. So it is important if you are doing things like texturing and here following the board texture in order to make sure that if any lines do show up, they look to be in the right plane. And you've got to remember to change your angle as you work from top to bottom. And it can catch you out. It's very easy to just not realise that you're continuing to use the same angle. Okay, I've now got a real light brown colour all the way over that side there, apart from around the window. And I still haven't decided what exactly to do in the window because it's reflecting stuff, and you've got a slight vague look inside, as well as the fact that there's a window frame. That could be a challenge, which we may well see if we can do something with. There's a net curtain inside though, so you can't really see it there, but you can in these two windows. I'm not sure about representing a net curtain, maybe sort of something in there. This one though has a lot of reflections. It's reflecting a tree which is just off of here, which I can clearly see in the window. And that may actually be doable. It's a shape that you can copy. How to get the shiny window? Probably because it's vaguely white. Yeah. Well, we'll see. And it's a rotten window frame down here, so again, black bits and things. A lot more work to do on here. Obviously this colouring is, some of that colouring comes down here, not all of it, because the wood is quite weathered. It's gone a silver grey, as wood, some woods tend to do. So yeah, some of this is this colour. Not quite white, but it's really close to it, and some of it has this brown wood preservative on it, which I've got to put in, and in some of the texture lines, some of the grain, not grain, it's kind of the rings, the structure of the wood. Some of the wood preservative still is in the dips in the wood. So you can actually sort of see lines going across here on these, which I want to try and put some of them in, not all of them, but some of them. It's more prominent on certain boards, like there's a board here where it's really prominent. Some of these it's not so, they're kind of smooth. Down here I can see some quite plainly, so I'll probably put some in various places. But that's going to be the extreme, is probably work more on that, maybe even the side window before I move on to this. I'm not sure about the roof yet, underneath it or anything around it, but it will be a case of we'll get there when we get there, and what we'll do is we'll draw the shapes, and that will give us what we're after in the end. So I won't be trying to draw a tree, I'll be doing dark spots and light spots and things like that. Right, unfortunately though, I think that's, yeah, it's 4 minutes to, I'm not actually going to do any more tonight than I've done there. It's a relatively slow, or it can be a relatively slow thing in pyrography. It's great for relaxing, by the way, if you're doing it. It's not necessarily as relaxing if you're streaming it, but when you're actually doing it by yourself, you just, I was about to say, kick back, lay back. Can't exactly lay back here, but it is sort of a nice relaxing thing, because you can take your time on it. You can turn the heat down on the tool, there's no rush, and you can get some quite incredible sort of detail into it as well. If you'd like to see the start of this stream, or the parts 1 and 2, They should be available still here on Twitch if you look in the video section. If not, or they've been deleted as Twitch only keeps them for a couple of weeks, then all the previous streams are available on YouTube, youtube.com/SaragaNart. This tonight's broadcast will go up there from 9 o'clock tomorrow. The earlier ones are available if you prefer to watch them there, or they're no longer available on Twitch. And things like the construction of the articulated truck, that's up on YouTube as well. That's been cut into short sections to make it easier to watch. It's not finished, isn't that one? We will be coming back to it when some of the painting is completed. I've done some of the painting on stream, most of the painting I'm doing off stream, and the clear coating has to be done off stream because it's going to be done in the garage. You can't do that in the studio because that still smells not very nice, and I don't want aerosol dust all over the place, which is what you get without some strong extraction. And whilst I can put that in front of me, it's kind of like it's just easy to do it. No, I can put a solvent mask on, and that way then I don't breathe it either, which is fantastic. So the whole point of that is you can take a look on YouTube. Every broadcast going back almost to the very start is available there as well. So you can see a lot of pyrography, cats, railway engines, planes, people, all sorts of stuff in pyrography, carvings there as well, and everything we do on the channel. Next stream therefore at the moment should be on Monday, 7 PM UK time. That's 1800 hours GMT. We're getting close to the time when I will be able to do some glass, but not yet. It's coming soon. TM, how long soon is not sure at the moment, but we're getting there. So I will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.